morning, my sweet bumblebees. I'm Gigi Ma Mel, and this is Living It Gigi Ma Style. This video is an introduction to the new book my husband has written, and he is going to read it for you folks here on my channel. He has, for those of you who don't know, my husband has quite a bit of social anxiety and is a lot shy. So he doesn't like being on camera. But he is an amazing writer, and his stories are absolutely wonderful. So I've agreed to let him read his stories through one of my creations, YOB, our changeling. So please enjoy, I hope you enjoy, Story Time with YOB, with my husband reading Robear and the Reaper. Now, I do have to have a bit of a disclaimer here, guys. The story isn't for children, okay? It's not a children's book. So, be aware of that. There is adult language and adult situations. So, be careful when reading with, or don't read with a child, okay? Or listen with a child, or wear your earbuds. Thank you for joining me. Please enjoy the first chapter of Robear and the Reaper. And we will do chapters every Sunday until the book is done. All right? Thank you, and have a great day. From Gigi to you, be happy, be safe, be sensible, and do your very, very best to behave. Please enjoy the story. Bye.
Today, Yob will be reading from Robear and the Reaper by Tim Stegaheis, where a series of metaphysical misadventures leads to a years-long search for the king of the necromancers. Enjoy. A rainy night on a Britain hill fort, and the sounds of grunting and swearing. A small skinny man dressed in rags is struggling to close a large rough-hewn wooden gate, while several people are trying to push it open from the other side. Desperation and a length of rope give the small man the leverage to hold on. A gruff voice says, "Be out of my way!" And with a kick, the gate flings open, throwing the man back into the mud. A line of large armed men tramps through, walking directly over the now buried man. One casually thrusts a spear into the man's chest as he walks over him. Close-up of fingers sticking out of the mud and filth, twitching momentarily, and then going still. A sudden cry of, "They are here! They are here! They have breached the river gate!" The speaker starts to yell more, but is silenced. A scream and some unintelligible voices as the scene shifts up to the moon, morphing into a round window. An old Norse wooden church. A lovely girl is standing and shouting in anger at the preacher. "Blasphemer! Liar! Wretch!" she shouts. The preacher talks calmly and tries to reason her shouts away, but the congregation has heard enough. They believe in their preacher and will not hear him accused like this. Even Torrin's own family is against her, and because she will not back down, drive her outside, where first one and then the whole congregation begin throwing stones at her until she lays broken and bloody. One large man picks up a huge stone and smashes it down on her head, killing her. After nightfall, her few loyal friends return to pull Torrin's lifeless body away, pan back up to the moon, and fade out of focus. A dark night. A slender woman climbs up a rope in the shadow of the castle wall tower. With practiced expertise, she slips over the crenel to lie on top of the wall. She is young, but not especially attractive. She gets up and stalks the nearest lookout. She grabs him by the neck and slices his throat before she notices that he is a scarecrow. She jumps back into the shadow of Merlin, but is immediately pierced by 3 arrows. As she sinks to the wooden floor, dying, another young woman walks up in the company of a large, well-dressed man and speaks with mock pity. "Oh, I once told you that we should follow the money and we would never go wrong. Lord Geoffrey pays double what the bear does. So now I am right and you are dead. So sorry." She puts out her hand and the Lord places 6 coins in it. As she turns to walk away, he nods to the nearest guard. The walking woman is suddenly jerks as an arrow sprouts from her back. The Lord walks up and casually picks up a trail of 6 coins, leading him to where she lies bleeding on the floor. "Follow the money, and you will never be wrong," he repeats back to her. "And when you spent twice that what your friend did in town, I knew that I wasn't wrong in guessing that you had betrayed her to get to me for the bear." To the guard, "Hang these 2 over the gate so the bear knows that both his plans failed." Pan up to the moon and down to a new scene. Mama Nettie, a dark voodoo priestess, is looking stern and serious as she says, "Lucille, you've been getting more and more evil with the people, and I'm just not going to let it happen anymore." Mama is dressed in an old gingham dress. Her opponent, seen from behind, is dressed in gaudy colors and an embossed leather belt. They have met in an old overgrown graveyard, vines and creepers everywhere. Mama's shadows gather around her menacingly as she continues. "You and I is going to have to just get it out right here and now, 'cause if I let you keep on getting folks up and afraid of us, it's just going to get bad for both of us." Mama's eyes grow wide as she realized that Lucille's cane had come up and struck her with a sharp, poisonous blade. The powers were already in action, and she was losing, indeed had lost. From out of view, Lucille lights a cigar and mutters, "You never did know when to shut up, you silly old cow." And a hollow series of voices proclaim ownership over Mama's spirit, and a low, thin scream is Mama's last word. Fade to black. Robear and the Reaper, Chapter 1. Robear de Lambrage was a dissatisfied man. He had been born into one of the lowest classes in old Baton Rouge, but had worked his way up to becoming a clerk in a clothing store on the fashionable East End. Yet this did not satisfy him. He had always believed himself to be destined for great things, and could not see them happening from this lowly position. Robear was a comely young man. Born in 1863, his Creole blood mixed well with his Seminole grandam to give him an almost continental look to his swarthy young face. He was tall and well made, and had he but gold in his pocket instead of copper, he could have passed himself off as a gentleman. Day after day he would assist aloof gentlemen and pompous ladies to select fine clothes and accessories for their social gatherings. Sometimes younger men and women would also come into the shop. These latter were worse than the older folks, as they did nothing to conceal their feelings of superiority. The shop owner liked young Robear, for he hid his resentment well and was polite and subservient to the customers. He paid Robear extra to work as a model for the man who painted the shop's advertising, making the expensive suits and shirts look especially fine with his natural good looks. Robear's grandam had tried to give the boy some of the old Indian wisdom that she had learned as a child. She also taught him his first shadow magic. The boy had learned the latter well, and had an uncanny talent for the craft. "Roby," she said, "if the white man had not taken away our land and customs, you would have been a great medicine man, and no mistake." She died when Robear was 12, and the boy was devastated. His father had worked in the fields all his days, and died there when Robear was 16. Robear worked as many odd jobs as he could find to support himself and his mother and young sister. Scarlet fever went through, and Robear lost his mother and sister to it. A few months later he found the job at the clothing store, running errands at first, then unloading wagons, and finally as a clerk, helping customers. His turning to the dark side came in the summer of 1885, when he went to see a traveling mystic show and spoke with the dark and furtive performers. True occultist with connections to both European black magic and old voodoo, they accepted him when he demonstrated an ability to make shadows bend to his will. They taught him some of the blacker magic, whetting his taste for more. Soon he was a regular at some of the local occult meetings in dark and unsavory places. His natural talents made him valuable in the eyes of the local dark practitioners, and as he learned to bind shadow demons to himself, they employed him in acts of blackmail, deceit, and extortion. Although not entirely comfortable with his new dark enterprise, and certainly not with the vile and cynical people with whom he found himself associating, Robear liked the money and power too much to resist the inevitable shift in his character. He now embraced acts of violence and fear as necessary to become someone he felt would be respectable. Yet he had little respect for his cohorts. He viewed them as simple parasites, not worthy of the great mysteries to which they had given him access. The old men of the craft, however, were not fools, and watched him closely. What a thrill it was when he first bought himself a fine suit of clothes and accessories from the shop where he worked. He told the store owner that he had won a prize in a local contest. However, the man was more concerned with the changes he saw in Robear's character. He was noticeably more confident, but inclined to be too forward with the customers. He was also far more eager to leave in the evenings. These things worried the shopkeeper, who had viewed young Robear like a son. After 5 years, Robear decided that he had learned all he would from the local occultist and voodoo priests. He wanted to move up in the world and find a more positive application for his talents. He knew that the old men would not let him just leave. He would have to perform special rites to divest himself of their influences and quickly slip away before they could reattach their spells of control. Robear bought his ticket to Atlanta, thinking that they would not be able to track him there. He quit his job and closed his lease on his room. These were his mistakes. The cultists had prepared for his leaving, and when he bought his ticket, they heard of it. And when he was about to board the train, the counter clerk said that he was to check in his bag with the clerk in the back room. Robear entered the room and knew something was wrong, but it was too late. A sharp jab in his arm signified that a needle had struck its mark. The drug worked quickly. He could not move or speak and fell to the floor. His body spasmed once and went rigid. 4 burly men appeared and lifted his body as a panel opened, revealing secret stairs leading down. For the first time, Robear found his spirit floating above his body and followed as they carried him down the narrow stair. He saw them put him down and watched as his body was stripped and placed in an especially repulsive-looking magic circle. 4 cultists were kneeling in the 4 corners of the small room, chanting. To Robear, they appeared to be glowing a dark red color, the circle emitting rays of blackness. As the ritual progressed, he realized that they were trying to steal away his command of shadows. The language denoting a spell of transference was plain enough, but there was a problem. The ability was not an acquired one. It was intrinsic to his being. They conferred and decided that if he died, the power would be free for them to take. The high priest in charge of the ritual walked up to his body and calmly slit his throat. The blood ran out all too quickly, and Robear watched helplessly as his body died. The shadow demons were freed from their bonds. On the positive side, some demons immediately killed the high priest and spoiled the ritual. On the negative side, the rest seized Robear's spirit and dragged him straight down through the earth to a rocky cavern somewhere. Once there, Robear was surprised to be confronted with several entities looking like skeletal corpses in tattered robes. These beings asserted their authority over Robear and all his demons. They were bidden to follow the corpse creatures, and all felt compelled to obey. They were led out through an opening into a depressing sight. A broad, rolling plain with occasional rocky outcroppings and not a speck of life, just acres and acres of transparent beings gathered about listlessly. Everything looked dead. The light was gray and diffused, not seeming to come from any point. The sky was a sea of wispy mists. A mile away or so, they could faintly see the far wall of this large canyon or valley. The spirits, for that's what they were, separated and gave way for the corpse-led party as they headed out to the right, somewhat uphill. The valley seemed to go on forever, and Robear felt that they had traveled for hours. As they progressed, the spirits around them seemed to get livelier and more aware. Some engaged in conversation or arguments. Some were reunited with family and friends, and occasionally pairs of lovers could be seen, desperately clinging to each other. At one point they passed a fight going on. If one fellow getting smothered in punches qualifies as a fight, Robear could see it well enough to notice that the man's wounds healed as quickly as they formed. The spirit man getting beaten was dressed in clerical robes, and the spirits attacking him were mostly dressed in fur and leathers. At long last they came upon a building, the only one as far as could be seen. It was a single point of focus for the spirits gathered nearby. Robed horrors like the ones leading Robear occasionally led spirits into the building. It was a perfect cube of black stone without ornament or windows. A single doorway marked the entrance into which they were drawn. As they approached, two other parties were drawing up to the building. One group was leading a small, nervous spirit man dressed in rags. The other was a wiry spirit woman dressed in dark, close-fitting garments and grimacing violently at the robed corpses. Indeed, one look at her face, and Robear felt fortunate that he was already dead. Once inside, things took on a very different theme. Rows of tables with the same corpse-like creatures standing on one side and lines of spirits facing them on the other. As he watched, he saw several spirits look relieved and float up to an anomalous hole in the ceiling where friendly-looking spirits would take them away. One snarling and argumentative man was grabbed by disembodied bony arms and dragged down through the stone floor. Some were given papers and told to wait outside. On the other side of this room was a huge black rectangle that must be a door, although it bore neither handle nor hinge nor any other fixture. It swung inward on their approach. Inside was what appeared to be an outer office, with 4 desks and some chairs scattered about. At the far side was another door, like the one they had just entered through. The 4 skeletal creatures at the desk were taller, in better shape, and better dressed than those outside. Also, there was another spirit waiting here, a ravishing beauty in a simple white dress, accompanied by 2 angels, complete with halos and wings. She seemed furious about being here, but said nothing, merely looked the other way when Robear smiled at her. The angels reminded him of the snooty young woman he used to wait on in the shop. Occasionally, one of the smaller robed horrors would enter, hand papers to the larger demons, and leave. As they were given seats and told to wait, a commotion burst in through the door they had just come through. A stout woman in a gingham dress was led in, chattering loudly. "Why won't you boys tell Mama what it's all about? I know this is white man's hell, but I'll tell you here true. I ain't going to stay here, no, sir. I got me some friends who will vouch for me, and I mean to get out of this place. Better places and peoples. I know a few things about what's supposed to happen down here, and I can tell you true. You can't hold me here. No, Mama, tell you true. I will be out of here, and soon." Just trying to keep up with the tirade was exhausting. She sounded like she was from the Caribbean islands, probably Haiti. Indeed, she only ceased her monologue when the inner door opened and a 9-foot-tall, faceless being in a cloak of darkest black swept in and took charge. "Greetings, dear spirits. I am Death," announced the entity. "You may know me as the Grim Reaper, Hades, or Hell, but I am the one who oversees the final journey for all spirits in the universe." Mama fell silent. The woman in leather lost her expression. The small man cowered, and even the angels paid respectful attention. "Now that you are all here, let's get right to the point. I despise the wasting of time." Robear listened as Death described the life, death, and possible future of each of them. Torren, Helmdolf's daughter, you were among the first of your clan to embrace the Christian religion. You aided and sheltered the fast-talking priest who claimed to be teaching the one true faith. When you found him robbing the poor box and convincing young maids to give him their virginity, you stood and accused him of treachery and lies. However, your people were so taken with his words and appalled at your reversal that they turned on you as an enemy and they stoned you. The god that snake salesman claimed to represent has turned you over to me as an agent to silence such false priests without harming the church. It will mean a permanent position if you succeed. Death turned to Robear, not giving Torren the opportunity to accept or refute the story just told. Robear de l'Ombrage, you dabbled naively in the dark arts, and those with whom you associated would have taken your abilities and thrown your corpse out with the old coffee grounds. Your death should have been foreseen by you, but your youth and inexperience made you blind to the truth. Your shadow demons still wish to take you to hell and torment you, but perhaps the lesson you have learned will make you a better master. The lot of you can be formed into a team to enforce Death's judgment. I will give you that opportunity. Ruth of the Sex, mid-rate assassin, you were betrayed by one of your own kind for a few coins, a common hazard in your profession. The abuse and mistreatment you experienced all your life is well known here. Though the deities that you were forced to worship would not excuse your cynical disinterest in the Earth's peoples, I do. Give me the same service that you sold to others, and there is a permanent place in my employ for you. The slender woman suddenly looked interested and hopeful. Hey you, for that is the only name they ever gave you, you were a simple serf, whom the enemies of your master deceived in opening the gate when it should have been shut. You were killed when the horde stormed in while you were vainly trying to reclose the gate. You were used and discarded like a rag. Serve me, and you will have a name and a role in this world. You've never asked for anything more. For now, you will have the name Nobody, for indeed, you have no body. And finally, to Mama Nettie. And yes, Mama, Lucille's mojo was greater than yours. I guess you can see that now. You never could accept how powerful the really evil side of voodoo could be, could you? Even with no face, he seemed to grin. Now you can make your point as one of my special shadow masters. You always did get along better with the shadows than with other people. The woman in the gingham dress was amazingly silent throughout the speech about her. Now, as to procedure. All of you are naked spirits. The clothes you seem to be wearing are just figments of your imagination. But please keep them on. It serves you better to do so. To return to the earth, you will need to be bound to a powerful agent of the afterworld. For the cultists, a scratch reaper, one of these assistants of mine. Also, the shadows you both have bound in life shall continue to serve you in death. For the Nordic Christian, an angel who will help you to discover your real abilities. Torren cringed. As for you, O mighty assassin, you have always served as the dog of some wealthy patron or the other. Now you will serve as my shadow dog of death. Nice title, eh? And the nobody shall, as you have probably guessed, have no body. Only a shadow with the ability to pass wherever you please, unnoticed except as a shadow. Again, the Scratch Reaper will help each of you manifest the necessary abilities for your jobs. He waved an empty sleeve over the nearest desk, and several papers appeared. Here are a list of your new abilities and shadow assignments, he said. Your Scratch Reapers are waiting outside and will show you where to get sent back to the Earth world. He opened the door behind him. Alina, here is Torren, as we discussed. Please help her make the most of her abilities for this assignment. An angel with an especially matronly demeanor stepped out and quickly merged into Torren's form. As Torren became solid and fleshy-looking, she looked down herself and muttered, We will have to get proper dress for you, girl. You are nearly naked in this thing. The two angels who had accompanied her covered their mouths to hide mirthful grins. The dress was ankle-length and revealed nothing, but Alina, now inside Torren, clearly did not approve. The two angels flew up through a hole that appeared in the ceiling and were gone. One of the scratch reapers picked up the papers from the desk and motioned them towards the door. The group of 5 were led back into the valley of the shadows of death and met up with another 3 scratches. Less overwhelmed now, Robear turned to one of the corpses that had accompanied him and asked, "What was that fight that we passed along the way about, anyway?" The creature thought for a moment and replied, "Oh, that! When somebody wants to start preaching this religion or that religion, death sets them up with an audience that has a vested interest in their subject. In this case, the preacher wanted to give a sermon on evangelism, and we placed a group of old Frankish warriors in front of him. Their whole clan was murdered by Christian knights for not converting to the new religion. Last year we had some Siberian shamans try the same thing. The fight lasted for months." He chuckled. Robear had to grin at the practical yet humorous solution to an age-old problem. Then their scratch reapers began joining to them, and a mind-numbing confusion prevailed for some time until they got into mental step with each other. Soon they found themselves at a particularly well-guarded opening into the valley wall, which led to a mirror. "This will lead us up to the earth plane," said Robear Scratch. Robear walked into the mirror. After banging his nose painfully, he asked a Scratch, "I thought you said this would take us up to the earth plane." "It will," chuckled the Scratch, "when one of us activates it." Thereupon someone, he could not be sure who, gave a mental command, and the mirror went dark. "Now we can go," said his Scratch. The next thing he knew, Robear was waking up on a stone floor.